After Square Enix completed development on Final Fantasy VI, they began to plan for the next installment before having to halt that and fully focus on finishing Chrono Trigger. But once they released Chrono Trigger, there was nothing standing in the way of Square and the next installment in the Final Fantasy series. However, Square needed to adapt or the games industry was gonna leave them behind as 3D took the spotlight, so they tested the waters by using FF6 characters and silicone graphics in a tech demo. And about a year and a half after that, Final Fantasy VII would launch in Japan on the PS1 because Square and Nintendo got in a bit of a dispute. Unfortunately, North America wouldn't see the game for another 6 months, but they made up for that by airing some pretty damn good commercials.
An evil empire is sucking the life force from the planet, destroying all that's in its path. It's up to one soldier of fortune to save the world. If he succeeds, you survive. If he fails, you can always hit the reset button.
With that, FF7 was almost out everywhere and was easily their most ambitious game to date. The gameplay is super fun and endlessly replayable because of how many materia combinations there are. The story is peak fiction, exploring the world is rewarding, and the visuals, well, leave a little to be desired. Polygon-ass motherfucker. It was very quickly outdated visually, even by Square themselves 2 years later when Final Fantasy VIII launched. Nearly 10 years went by with more entries to the franchise being added, with no sign of Square returning to the world of FF7, which made sense because most Final Fantasy games are one and done. Until Square would show something that would spark years of conversation and speculation. They remade the iconic intro of Final Fantasy VII as a tech demo for the PS3, leading to rumors of a potential full game remake. But Square brought out the gun and shot those down quickly. Luckily, there were other plans to expand upon the story with a movie that takes place after the original game, along with a couple of games in the following years. All of these together formed the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, and Crisis Core was the bow on top of a roughly wrapped gift. Years went by without anything FF7 related happening, so it was presumed they were done and leaving it to rest. Until December 7th, 2014 at the PlayStation Experience. Oh, never mind, they just ported it to PS4. Well, guess that's it. See ya. Is what I would say if 6 months later, nearly 20 years after the original's release, Square Enix showed a trailer that started off very eerie and seemed like a movie at first. But as it progressed, it became more obvious as to what it is.
At last, the promise has been made.
Remake to one of the most beloved games ever, met with wild fan enthusiasm alongside it. An interview with Tetsuya Nomura popped up shortly after on CNET, where he talked about how they're approaching the remake, which was to basically modernize it for the current generation as well as making it feel fresh for returning players by adding an element of surprise. Suddenly, the final sentence of the announcement trailer makes sense.
The reunion at hand may bring joy, it may bring fear, but let us embrace whatever it brings.
The hype would continue not too long after in December with some actual cutscenes and a decent chunk of gameplay that confirmed 7 Remake will have action combat. You could tell it was still early in development given how poorly it was running at times, but who gives a shit when the game looks good and is finally real after so long? Square was probably very willing to give this project in specific a lot more time in the oven than usual because it's essentially the golden boy of the franchise, and it needed to be treated with the utmost care or a majority of fans would be upset. Seeing as there was a lot of pressure on the game, it got nervous and hid away for a few years. There was a tiny bit of stuff drip fed to us during that time though, mainly concept art and that Square Enix was moving development of Final Fantasy VII Remake to their in-house organization, whereas before it was progressing with external collaboration. Just before the summer of 2019, Sony hosted a state of play that had stuff like Monster Hunter World Iceborne and the Medieval remake, which wasn't the only remake shown during the presentation. To wrap up the show, we got a brand new look at Final Fantasy VII Remake after a few years of it cooking up, and dude, we are so back! The revamped gameplay and UI looked great, and we got our first look at Aerith and Sephiroth backshots. It was shaping up to look pretty great, and the hype just kept rolling because there was another trailer in June with even more of that sweet gameplay and our first look at Tifa, who seems a little upset at the Avalanche ways, accompanied by Sephiroth front shots along with the worldwide release date of March 3rd. Why is this the second game I'm doing a big video on that comes out on March 3rd? The marketing for 7 Remake was now in full swing. We'd get a couple more trailers throughout the year, mainly at Tokyo Game Show and the Game Awards, with the former showing a minigame and a few villains. Other than that though, not a whole lot of noteworthy stuff, so the 3-month wait began after the Game Awards. That is, until 2 weeks into the new year, a blog from Kitase was posted on Square's website saying that the game needed more time for polish and was pushed back till April 10th. So, the 3-month wait started again. Luckily, it was softened from the demo that launched very close to the original release date that allowed people to play through the first bombing mission of the game. And then, April 10th finally arrived, and almost 25 years after the original release, 15 years of speculation after the technical demo got unveiled, and 5 years of waiting after the official announcement trailer, Final Fantasy VII Remake is finally real. And despite the absurdly high expectations the project had, it got universal praise by both fans and critics, mainly for its top-notch character writing, fun engaging gameplay, and having great story moments. It would also go on to be one of the studio's best-selling games at over 7 million units sold. But wait, there's more. Roughly a year after launch, an upgraded version of Remake would be shown off, and it also unlocked one of the PS5's long-awaited features. Finally, my PlayStation has graphics! There were also some extra doodads added, like some new bosses and a new story DLC starring Yuffie, which I actually haven't played yet, or anything in Intergrade for that matter, so you'll get to know my thoughts on that stuff later in the video. Now, with all of that out of the way, it's time to dive deep into why this is one of my most beloved games, while hopefully letting you learn some new things about it. Welcome to Final Fantasy VII Remake. You play as Cloud Strife, aka Soldier Boy, who is a mercenary hired from Avalanche to help with a tiny terrorism job. Yeah, that Mako reactor's going down. No, not again! It's pretty obvious within this opening hour where a lot of the time went into this game. Box physics! Those are damn good, but still not as great as the character writing and localization. People with not much screen time in the original now get their time to shine bright in Remake. For instance, Jessie, Biggs, and Wedge, who are with you for like a total of 30 minutes in the original, are basically main characters in Remake. And you can now experience Jessie's non-stop horniness for Cloud in high definition.
Mind coming over tomorrow night? My roommates should all be out for a while.
Are you seriously that desperate?
What's not to love about the trio? They even get an entire chapter dedicated to fleshing out their characters. Mainly Jessie, but there's still a few tidbits about Biggs and Wedge. Midgar as a whole feels much more lively now as well. People are everywhere and have unique dialogue when running past them, which is something they definitely didn't have to do, but it helped me get immersed further into the world. I haven't even touched on your actual party members yet. Obviously, they're written fantastically and incredibly hot. But what good is great writing if you don't have a cast that suits the characters? Luckily, that's not an issue because everyone is genuinely casted perfectly. They did a great job at making these characters come to life. Each conversation they have comes off very natural. It just feels like a group of friends hanging out with each other, and since everything is just expanded more in the remake, it means more time is given to them interacting with one another. It's so nice to see Barrett and Aerith banter because they really didn't talk much in the original. In fact, any moment with Aerith in this game is peak fiction.
You worry too much. I'm not some princess who needs to be coddled. Shit.
She's a little sassy bundle of joy, and I honestly think you could make like a 3-hour compilation of her just being a goofy gal. But man, that is going to make that scene hurt so much more. You know the one. Even Cloud's character is fleshed out, showing more of his soft side and less of his "I'm such a tough, edgy soldier guy" stuff. He still never went to therapy, so his brain is somehow a bit more cuckoo now seeing into the future. Dude, take your own advice.
Get help.
All of the emotional scenes hit really fucking hard in the heart bone. The performances are so damn good, it's basically impossible not to be in tears during the tragic moments.
God damn you all!
At first glance, this seems like a faithful remake, and there would be no reason to think otherwise unless you've played the original, in which case things start seeming a bit different and weird almost immediately. Like Sephiroth appearing in places he didn't in the original, and whispers that are brand new to this story. The changes at first are very subtle to begin with. Sephiroth tries stalling Cloud so he doesn't reach Aerith, but the whispers are there to keep her put, so his efforts were futile. The reason they've been given the nickname Plot Ghosts is because their sole purpose is to make sure the original story stays intact no matter what. And they will go to quite far lengths, like bringing out the whole crew just to be sure Jessie gets injured so that Cloud can take her place in the mission. As the story progresses, the changes that could have happened if not for them would have been crazy. No spoilers for me though. I know they can be hit or miss for some people, but luckily there's still plenty of moments in Final Fantasy VII Remake where it's like, yeah, okay, they understood the assignment and got an A+. One of the best examples of this is Wall Market, which is one of the most memorable parts of the game. You get to participate in a tournament that leads to an incredible fight with the Hell House, which is easily the best way to make fans and newcomers love an already beloved enemy even more. There was a lot of questions regarding the remake as it was approaching release, one of the biggest ones being, are they gonna put Cloud in a dress? And it is with great honor that I'm proud to say that not only is it here, it's also an incredible moment where you have to put on a show at the Honey Bee Inn and then voila! Cloud is now extra purty. Also, the fucking motorcycle segments are gas. Pun very much intended. And they introduce Roche, who is just psychotic in the best ways. So, yeah, it's safe to say that if you want to see a beloved scene recreated, they will give it to you and more. Exploring through Midgar, specifically the slums, is oddly beautiful despite it being mostly a trashy place. But god damn is it some good looking trash. There are of course more areas than the slums you'll be able to see in high fidelity, like the sewers, Wall Market, and the haunting atmosphere of the train graveyard. Most, unfortunately, don't look great during the day, or at least the places you see during the day don't. Luckily, nighttime is the saving grace because the lighting in FF7 Remake is some of the best the industry has to offer. Each area at nighttime looks phenomenal. The atmosphere is unmatched, and everything just comes to life during the cold night. Every time I went somewhere new, I would be sure to take in the sights to let it soak in and have a chance to breathe from the hardships and tragedy you're faced with in the story. Other ways to take a breather from the main story are the side quests, which are usually given to you in abundance at the start of certain chapters. And they are fine, none of them are really memorable, most just being to find something or someone or some more combat that you can never go wrong with, and will occasionally lead to a fight with a unique enemy, which is honestly more than I expected. But for being optional content, they do their job pretty well in being a good way to kill some time and preparing you for the tough journey ahead of you if you're not already. Midgar is filled with tons of nooks and crannies that make it engaging to explore and worth your while, since you can get anything from a basic chest with common items to some sick people in an alleyway, or purple chests which usually have better items in them, and ooh, a piece of candy! Not all of it comes at the price of hooking a right when you should have made a left though. Sometimes there's extra extra work involved in the form of puzzles that I found to be quite fun. Probably because they weren't hard and I'm a bit stupid in the head, but that's besides the point. Of course, as is Final Fantasy tradition, there's a few mini-games to be played. A couple of ones from the OG game make a return, like having to pull levers in sync to open a door, and the squatting minigame, which has multiple difficulties to it, and eventually you can do pull-ups with Tifa, which is a much harder version of the minigame. One of my favorite moments was the Honey Bee Inn minigame. It's just a really good looking rhythm game, which you can never go wrong with. My only issue with it was that I couldn't fully enjoy the show because I was too tunnel visioned on not missing any notes, but I obviously just went back and watched it. Original Final Fantasy VII has a timeless soundtrack with many iconic songs, and I used to listen to it a lot even before the remake came out. But now that they are no longer shackled to the restraints of MIDI, not that that's a bad thing of course, however they have a lot more to work with now and were able to use their special sauce to remake most of the music. Exploring Midgar would definitely not be the same without the tunes that play throughout it. It helped a lot doing the side quests because I could just zone out and vibe to whatever song was playing. You'll also hear lots of music that's hidden at first until you find the source and you're either given it or have to pay a small price for it. Typically they're remade versions of songs you'd otherwise not hear yet and each have unique album art, which I thought was cute. And when you have one-on-one conversations with Tifa and Aerith, a somber piano melody plays, and then it gets brought back up when you get in combat. Each area gets its own theme, or at least it felt that way. I don't know if they actually do. And every one of them goes so goddamn hard. Even if the combat wasn't as great as it is, I feel like I'd still engage with it just to hear the music. The combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake is fantastic. Square Enix found the perfect balance between high-octane action gameplay and keeping the strategic nature of the turn-based game with the ATB bar. The remake luckily doesn't have the same issue as the original game's combat, which was being incredibly easy even during the boss fights. If you decide to play on normal mode, then you can expect a decent challenge in most encounters, which is a big relief because it'd be a shame if this almost perfect combat system went to waste. Battles are no longer triggered from random encounters. Now all you have to do is just run up to them and oh dear god! Combat is insanely fun. The basic combo feels good and responsive, and each character has a unique ability on the triangle button as well. As you land attacks, the ATB bar will fill much faster, which gives you access to basically everything else. Items, magic, and whatever abilities you have unlocked. Each weapon has an ability that can be used freely with other weapons after you've mastered it. All of this combined leads to one of the funnest gameplay loops where you build up ATB during a battle and try to build up the enemy stagger gauge using a mix of magic and abilities. And then you just unleash everything since they take more damage when staggered. Everything just feels so satisfying, and there's still more to it. Cloud, Tifa, Barret, and Aerith play pretty differently from one another. I'm not entirely sure how to describe Cloud's playstyle aside from just saying he's pretty well balanced in speed and damage. He can also rip and tear through enemies in Punisher mode. Tifa is fast paced and does good damage, on top of also being able to combo together attacks. Barret guns foes down from afar and can shoot bigger bullets with his special move. Or he can use his big beefcakes to beat them down using certain weapons. Aerith also fights from afar using magic and has one of the most helpful abilities in the game, letting you cast a spell twice by standing in the area. It's a miracle that all of them are very fun to play to the point that I really can't pick a favorite. They knocked it out of the park. Materia is back and left mostly untouched from the original, aside from just making it easier to swap it around. Not much else to say about it other than that it's still a great system. Chadley is a new character and is very helpful. He gives you a few tasks to complete that can give extremely helpful materia, and has VR missions that are just battles against the summons and you're rewarded with that summon materia. Going back to the weapons, they can be upgraded to have better stats and whatnot by entering into their mind and spending SP, which can be gained by leveling up or from books. I don't know how many volumes there are, but I know how to get 2 of them, purchasing them from the Moogle shop and completing battles at the Coliseum that I completely forgot was a thing during my playthrough until the last second. Which sucks because each character's level 2 limit breaks can be obtained there. Man, I could have had them way earlier than when I got them. Fuck! Not to sound like a broken record, but the boss battles are also insanely fun. Obviously every single one from the original is here, but there's also a lot of new ones that fit into the story nicely. None of them drop the ball when it comes to giving you a challenging fight where you absolutely have to use strategy to come out victorious. And goddamn does it feel worth it, because some of these endings go so insanely hard it left me speechless. The music too, man, god damn! Every theme kicks so much ass, they made me not want to kick the boss's ass just to keep listening to it. The biggest addition to the PS5 and PC versions of Remake, sorry PS4 users, is the Intermission DLC where you follow Yuffie and gang through their own journey in Midgar. They somehow managed to make the gameplay equally as fun even with just Yuffie and Sonon as your party. They made air combat feel a little better than the base game, which wasn't that great, so it's nice to see it improved. There's also a couple newly added features like perfectly timing your block for a parry and sync skills, which are very powerful but require both to have at least one ATB bar to dispose of. Unfortunately, the DLC is pretty short, so you don't get too much time to play around with the combat. The story does feel a bit rushed because of the length of the DLC as well, but that didn't stop me from liking the characters and going through emotional turmoil by the end. I didn't really do much of the optional stuff since I was kind of getting burnt out on exploring Midgar, but the little bit I played of Fort Condor was pretty fun and I hope it returns in the sequel. Once you finish Intermission, you'll unlock a bonus fight in the combat simulator, which is basically the same thing as the Coliseum. And it's a fight with Vice, who will fuck your shit up and ruin your day. However, it's still a fun challenge from the few attempts I did. It didn't feel unfair, it just requires you to push the combat to its absolute limits. And I'd love to go back, but burnout got the best of me, but I will absolutely try it again. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a very good remake. Despite some people condemning them for the story changes, most people appreciate them, though they also make much more sense when you realize it's a And honestly, playing Remake first heightened my first playthrough of the original because I was able to read the dialogue with their actual personalities and voices fresh on my mind. I feel like the Remake trilogy is going to be something very special, especially after the ending seemingly opened up a lot of possibilities for the future games. And at the time of writing this portion, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is about a day away, which feels surreal because I swear it got announced like yesterday. So if there was an absence on my channel, you can blame it on that, but it was probably worth it since this game, from the very little I've seen, seems to be an improvement from Remake in a lot of ways, which is very exciting. One more thing before this video comes to a close. A lot of companies are laying off a shit ton of people, which fucking sucks, and it's hard to feel safe or that you're doing good because of it. So I just want to say to anyone making games out there that you are doing an amazing job, and if you are affected by the layoffs, I am so incredibly sorry. No one deserves that. But you'll make it through it, alright? My life truly wouldn't be the same without developers all across the world making some good-ass games, and these CEOs can suck my balls for being greedy bastards. With that, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye!